Sorry to be late. Today is a year from the tragedy which occurred, which took the life of Philando Castile. It's one of the very most traumatic events that's occurred in my 6.5 years as governor of Minnesota, and it's had long-lasting traumatic effects on so many people who, from their own personal experience, life experience of family and friends, have experienced those kinds of tragedies and fears. And it's also had a terribly difficult, created a terribly difficult situation for many of our tremendous law enforcement men and women who risk their lives every day and night to keep the rest of us safe. As witnessed just the other day in New York with a horrific murder of a police officer. So everybody has been, I believe, brought to face with some of the pervasive challenges that we face here in Minnesota, which are difficult for people like me, especially older people who grew up in a pretty much homogeneous Minnesota environment and now are living in one of the many diverse states in the country. And an incident like this shows all of us that we have a lot more work ahead of us, a lot more we need to do working together to improve our quality of our relationships with one another and with the institutions of our society, with the communities in our society that reflect this increased diversity. Commemorate this year's passage, I have written a letter which I believe has been distributed to the chair and the executive director of the Post Board, following up on overwhelming recommendation from the council that I established on law enforcement community relations to name the training fund that was just established by the Minnesota legislature in a bipartisan basis to name that after Mr. Castile. I think it's appropriate to commemorate that this is what prompted, inspired the funding that I requested of the legislature, $10 million, and the legislature, to its enormous credit, exceeded that with $12 million of funding for training on a voluntary basis for law enforcement officials and community members all over the state, because it's only by people working together who maybe now feel somewhat estranged from one another. It's only by them coming together and working together and realizing the common cause that we all have. We all live in this state. We all need to live together in this state, peacefully, harmoniously, constructively, respectfully. And it's my hope that this training will really be focused on that occurrence and making that a reality. So I've written this letter to the Post Board as the fund is administered by the board. So it's certainly their prerogative whether to proceed, but given the council's overwhelming recommendation and my support, I'm hopeful the Post Board will name this fund, training fund, in honor of Mr. Philando Castile. Also today, making appointments to the Post Board, including Mr. Castile's uncle, Mr. Clarence Castile, who to the Post Board as a public member, as part of this rapprochement of people in the communities of color with law enforcement, and bringing this kind of training program, which is so important to moving ahead together, and making sure that that community perspective is represented, and no one knows more emphatically from personal experience than Mr. Clarence Castile the effect of an incident like this on himself, on his family, sister Valerie, and others who suffered that terrible loss. He's been exemplary in his participation on the council earning the respect of people from all spectrums, all different backgrounds and pursuits. And you have his bio, I believe, in front of you, or you can distribute that, but I think it's important to note that he's recently named a reserve officer in the St. Paul Police Department. So he's really committed himself in the aftermath of this tragedy to building upon it and creating a better Minnesota. And I have great respect and admiration for him for doing so, and for his sister Valerie. And I express my heartfelt sympathy on behalf of all Minnesota to them today, and I believe this is a very important positive step forward to begin to make healing part of our necessary priority throughout Minnesota. So with that, Clarence or Valerie?
Good morning, everyone. Today marks the first year without my son. I want to thank the governor and the post board and everyone that was involved in making this decision to name the bill after my son. He deserves it. And it's to the point where we need this bill. We need this extra training for our police officers, because at the end of the day, everyone wants to go home. The police wants to go home, and the civilian wants to go home. And if we can combine our minds and work together as human beings, then that will happen. We have to learn how to communicate better with one another. We're supposed to be the most intelligent species on the planet, but look what we do to one another. We're worse off than some animals, you know, that just go around and prey on people and kill each other. And I think this bill would be very, very helpful in our relationship with one another with the police. The police, we need them, because the world would be chaotic if we didn't have the police. Don't get me wrong, I love having the police to protect and serve us, but when it comes to the point where there's miscommunication and it turned out the way it turned out with my son, it's unacceptable. And I think with the proper training and being able to have a dialogue with a person, that you can come to a resolution where everybody goes home. This is not about my son anymore. I said that from the very beginning. This is about the next generation of children, our future leaders. They need to be protected as well. And with the help of the police, we can grow into a wonderful civilization. And I just feel at this point, so many things have gone wrong and gone bad. We're not evolving as a civilization, we're devolving. I mean, it's gotten to the point, I mean, my son was a very loving, caring, and honest person. He was honest with the officer, but he still ended up being killed. And I don't understand how that went wrong. And I think that the training would also be effective in that area. And we as parents, we have a certain amount of accountability as well. We have to teach our children better also. It's not just about the police, it's us as a community and being human beings. And I just want to thank the governor and everyone that made that leap and put my son's name on that bill, because like I said, he deserved it. And I just love all you guys, and we need to treat each other better. We need to love more instead of hate. This world is so filled with hate these days that it's just, I don't understand it, but I just feel like we should love one another more and get to know each other. Get out of your police car, walk around, get to know the people. Don't make such snap judgments, because everyone's not a bad person. But with that training bill, that will help. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Governor Dayton for doing what he did and starting the Council of Law Enforcement and Community Relations. I want to say thanks to his staff for the support and the love and help that they gave our family from day one. In regards to the training bill, it's a wonderful thing. It was something that got started all the way back in August. Conversation actually started in August with me and Nate Gove from the Post Board, the director. It started in August and it rolled on, and by January, February, we had a bill. And it was a beautiful thing. So, and in regards to me being appointed on this Post Board panel, I'm really excited about that. And again, I would like to thank the governor and his staff. I don't have too much to say. I'm more of a man of action than a man of words, but thank you. Thank you very much.
James Burrows is our Chief Inclusion Officer for the state of Minnesota, and I'm told the first such Chief Inclusion Officer of any state in the nation, which we're very proud. He has also organized and led this Governor's Council on Law Enforcement and Community Relations, and has been instrumental in building these relationships. So, Mr. Burrows.
Thank you, Governor. First of all, good morning. I'd like to thank the Castile family, Governor Dayton, and everyone today. Today is a tough day because this is the year after Philando Castile was shot. My life changed at that moment, but my life changed for the better when I met the Castile family and Valerie and Clarence. And I want people to understand that this work that we're doing on the Governor's Council, this work we're doing in the state, is only going to be successful is if the families, the community, and others come together with collaborative solutions that can work for everyone in this state. One of the things that the council wanted to do and say to Clarence is, thank you for your service, Clarence. You've been tremendous in attending just about every meeting, wanting to be at every aspect of the training bill that was put together by law enforcement and community, and also to implement it. I will say this, the work starts now. It's not an end of the work today, it's the beginning of it. So naming the training bill after Philando Castile is a wonderful step. Putting Clarence on the Post Board Council, Post Board is a wonderful step, but the work is going to have to continue with implementation of training that's not only effective for officers, but also effective and inclusive of community. So one of the things that the Post Board will work with, and Clarence will do this as well, is making sure there's collaboration and that law enforcement and community work together to make this the first step in many that will take place to transcend Minnesota into something that's doing a lot of positive things around law enforcement and community relations. The last thing I'll say is the governor has had the opportunity to meet with quite a few community groups and community leaders, and also will meet with police chiefs in the upcoming week as well to get their input and feedback, and also have met with a lot of community leaders in our leading listening discussions as well around the council. No one has all the answers. The governor always asks the question, what can we do now? How do we move forward? And that's something that every Minnesotan can ask themselves and then provide input in moving this forward. So I want to thank Clarence and Valerie and making myself also a part of their family as we've done this work together. So thank you.
With us today are other members of the Castile family, and State Representative Rena Moran, who's here, evidence her support. Appreciate very much you're all coming today as well. We'll open it up for questions on this subject. We'll move on to others afterward.
Some of you mentioned the need for public involvement. The public needs to look, apparently needs to be trained too. $12 million, as I understand, for law enforcement. Governor, you and Valerie both said something about the public. What should be done to help the public understand and to better respond?
Well, I think Valerie said it very well. We all need to broaden our understanding, you know, and the way that some people treat police. I've been on police ride-alongs, and the way some people treat police who are there for their safety and protection is just really appalling. So, you know, we all need to broaden our understanding that we're all human beings, and we're not demarked by our race, by the color of our uniform. But we're all human beings, that we share, as Valerie says, well, a common desire to all go home safely. And I believe this training, and one of the reasons I'm really glad that Clarence Castile has agreed to join the Post Board to be involved with shaping this training, it needs to be collaborative. You know, there's law enforcement trainings going on, and some law enforcement agencies in Minnesota have done exemplary work already, and we're going to look at the best practices of what's already been done in Minnesota and elsewhere to build these better relationships. But I personally believe, and I urge the Post Board to engage other community members in designing and implementing this training, so it is a collaborative, so that the very act of the training itself is bringing people together from disparate backgrounds and communities, and I think that it was absolutely necessary for the training to be effective. Go ahead.
In regards to the community learning how to de-escalate situations just like the police, the community needs to learn how to de-escalate and learn conflict resolution skills as well. They may not have the funding, but we need to have people who are willing to go into schools and go into rec centers and teach our young people how to handle situations when they get into them. And that's one of the things that I plan on doing with the information and knowledge that I get from the St. Paul Police Department, from their reserve, program, and talking to other police officers and talking to the other board members on the post board. And as I go on through my learning in the post board, I'm sure I'll pick up some things from certain curriculums and things that I'll be looking over as well, which will help me be able to deliver this education to other people, meaning the community and younger people of color, of whoever's there listening. I plan on collaborating with people who run mentoring programs. That's the plan, and I've already started making contact and things of that nature. So that's what I have to say in regards to your question.
Is there a state role in doing this public training, if you will?
No, this is just something that I'm volunteering to do on my own time, because I think it's important that we understand how to not get goaded into a situation or let something build you up and have a situation. I mean, we want these kids and younger people to have skills, how not to get into a situation.
Mr. Castile, can you say more about how this came about? Does the police department approach you, or is this something you set forward?
It's something, well, with the reserve, it was something I started back in 2015, actually. And the background check and all that stuff just like took forever, and before you know it, this thing happened with my nephew, so it all got put on the back burner at that point. And some ways, months afterwards, it came back up and I decided to go ahead and follow through on it. I mean, it was time. It was time.
Mr. Castile, and now as a member of the Post Board, but you have obviously solid connections in the community as well. Where are the areas that need improvement in peace officer standards and training? You're in a position now to influence them. Where do you see the areas that need to be changed?
Well, basically in racial equities and learning cultural backgrounds, learn some cultural proficiencies, and de-escalation skills need to be enhanced. I mean, in the situation that our family was tossed in with my nephew, things went so fast. And, they say that when there's a police-involved shooting, it usually happens within 2 minutes of an encounter. And in Philando's situation, he was shot and killed within, 74 seconds? So, I mean, it's all about being able to use those resources that you're trained in, those training skills, along with common sense. Be able to look at a situation and more or less see what's going on before you act. So hopefully, the training will just help our police officers and peace officers be better at what they do. Slow down, to the speed of life and just see what's going on before they start acting. And I'm sure most of them do that.
Other questions?
Yeah, follow up, Governor. 1 year ago, you said that you didn't think Philando Castile would have been shot if he were white. Given everything that's transpired since, do you still feel that way?
I think the evidence is emphatically clear that he was identified by the officer because of the color of his skin, and according to the officer's own recorded words, that resembled another alleged offender from a previous incident. So yes, I stand absolutely by that. Now, that doesn't mean Minnesota police officers are racist. It doesn't mean that everybody is involved in racial profiling. It means in this particular instance, that's what precipitated the encounter, which, as Mr. Castile just said, rapidly escalated way beyond whatever should have occurred with somebody being pulled over for a broken taillight. So I've been accused of casting aspersions on all of Minnesota law enforcement because of my own opinion, my own judgment of this one particular incident, which is, I think, just not valid extrapolation. I have utmost respect for, as I say, the overwhelming 99.9% of law enforcement officers in Minnesota who engage with community members under all sorts of situations. I've been on police ride-alongs and follow along behind police as they run around the corner into a dark alley and wondered what's around that corner waiting for them. I mean, it takes, frankly, more courage than I have. So, but it also means they got to be able to operate in those situations with the utmost restraint, and that's where this training is so vitally important. So, long-winded way of saying I stand by what I said before.
Governor, what do you think of the letter that the judge sent to jurors supporting him?
Certainly his prerogative. You know, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not trained in criminal law. I mean, he was making a point that he has the perfect right to make, and I don't have any comment on one way or the other. It's his prerogative.
Governor, shortly after Mr. Castile was shot, you said justice will be served. Has justice been served? And I'd like to hear from the Castile family as well.
Well, the way our system of justice works is, in this case, a county attorney brought charges, and a jury exonerated the officer from those charges. As the judge was saying in his letter, it was an application of the law as defined in state statute to the situation as the jurors proceeded. That is our system of justice. Whether I agree or disagree with that particular verdict, first of all, I'm not privy to all of the information that the jurors and others who sat through that trial for all those hours were, so I'm not going to pass judgment on that. I said before, the incident itself, I deplore the incident that occurred, the tragedy that occurred, befell Mr. Castile. It's one of the most traumatic, if not the most traumatic, events that's happened in my 6.5 years in terms of the long-lasting divide that's exacerbated unfairly, but irretrievably. And so I think, again, you know, today, as Mr. Burrows says, well, is a day we're moving forward. Going back and revisiting, remembering what occurred is essential, but constantly revisiting it beyond this point, I think, becomes counterproductive. We have a responsibility, all of us who are engaged in public service, to do what we can to bring Minnesotans together. And that's the spirit of the training. That's the spirit of my appointment of Mr. Castile to the Post Board. That's the mandate the Post Board has with regard to this training from the legislature. And that's what I contend to continue to work on as well.
Do any of the members of the Castile family wish to address that?
Anything else on this subject? Oh, go on. Oops, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Tracy Castile. And to answer your question, no.
And to answer your question, no. Was the judicial system followed? Yes. Everyone has their own opinion, and I can throw the question back at you. Do you think justice was served? Thank you.
Governor, I just have a quick question. In terms of the funds that will be allocated for officers that are patrolling diverse communities, has it been discussed yet how will the training differ from an officer that's maybe patrolling a predominantly white community?
The training is, by the action of the legislature, assigned to be administered by the Post Board. And so the training itself has not yet been even really conceptualized or designed. I mean, those will be some of the important issues they'll need to address. Again, my hope is that they will proceed with an inclusive way. And we have very diverse communities, very different. Some communities, you know, predominantly people of color, some predominantly people who are white. So, I mean, probably it's not a one-size-fits-all. And that'll be something I trust they'll take into consideration.
Question just one final, if I may. And I detect you're not happy with the verdict, but you are in a position to potentially change the laws. My question is, should police application of force standards or use of force standards be reviewed in the state?
You know, I'm not spending a lot of time in discussions with the legislature these days. We got 8 months, I believe it is, till the next legislative session. Certainly something I'll take a look at. Community groups, law enforcement groups, others take a look, but I don't have any basis to comment on that today.
Question from Mr. Grove, if I may, about...
Mr. Burrows?
I'm sorry, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Is there any timeline as to when you want this curriculum to be online and when this training should start?
Sure. As the governor said, the post board is going to be responsible for the training and the rollout of it. So the allocation, I believe, happened July 1st. Nate Gove, who's executive director of the post board, and his board chair, his board will work together on identifying vendors through the different locales. So let me be real clear. The post board allocation of this resource will go out to various police in different cities throughout the state of Minnesota. Those police stations and those police organizations will identify trainers to work with them, and those kind of parameters, large-scale parameters, will be set by the post board. It is our hopeful opinion and the governor's recommendation as well that it's not just your typical police trainers who've trained police for years, but also members of community are involved in designing and implementing that training as well. So the timing would be the response from the post board, and they'll make sure that they do that in a timely fashion, I'm sure. But we're hopeful that it's police officers and community together during the training.
Mr. Burrows, I realize there's more meetings left, but as you approach the next report, September, I think you were aiming for, what are some of the types of recommendations that you're kicking around on this council?
Sure, I don't want to finalize anything, but some of the things that have been identified by public members and also members of the council are looking at reasonable force standards, looking at de-escalation training, looking at diversifying our officer workforce from a racial perspective as well, increasing the diversity there. Some of the things that have been looked at as well as community policing, a better job of looking at how community and police interact when situations like this haven't happened or occurred, but just on a regular basis. Other things that have been looked at as well is how accountability for police officers. So when incidents do occur, even if they don't make it to a jury trial, what's the accountability from law enforcement internally through the unions and also through supervisors and managers. So those are just a few of the things we're continuing to look at. And I want to encourage folks to continue to give us feedback and come to listening sessions as well, because we want your opinion as well.
Late September is still the...
September 29th is the date.
Mr. Castile, one additional. Do you believe that police use of force standards need to be looked at thoroughly in the state of Minnesota?
Well, I mean, we could look at them, but I don't think we need to go and rewrite the whole book off of this particular incident. But they can be looked at, like I said, yes.
Are there some areas where they're misdirected, where they need
I'm not sure. I'm not that familiar with everything that happens in use of force and things. I'm not an expert there, so hard for me to answer that question.
Okay.
Okay. Say goodbye here a minute, and we'll turn to other subjects. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Going down the line, fire now.
Yeah.
Start to, what happened to you?
Governor, Speaker Dowd, Speaker Dowd said a couple days ago that he had no plans to meet with you. He's confident that the court is going to rule in his favor, and then off we go from here. So what your reaction?
Well, that's what he said. You know, we're proceeding with the litigation. The chief judge of the district court is presiding, and we're waiting for his determination, and there really isn't any more conversation to be had until the court matters proceed further.
If the ruling is not in your favor, then is there intent to appeal?
Yes. My understanding, if the ruling is not in the legislature's favor, they intend to appeal, but both sides recognize that this is ultimately a matter that should be decided for the sake of Minnesota for now and for the future by the Minnesota Supreme Court.
You've spoken several times in the past couple of weeks about reaching out to law enforcement and respect for law enforcement. And yet I haven't seen you have any public meetings with law enforcement, and they were not here with the police officer training fund. Have you had those meetings?
I'm meeting tomorrow with the new director of the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, and his predecessor, Danny Flaherty. I'm meeting tomorrow after that meeting with a group of police chiefs. So we are making this, my participation as inclusive as possible.
Did you invite them here for this announcement?
Did not. We invited the family.
Other questions? Governor, there's some talk as the Enbridge Line 3 pipeline is discussed about the same thing happening here that happened in North Dakota. Do you have concerns? Do you have any preparations? Are you doing anything to prevent that?
Well, I'm not going to prejudge, but certainly there are people who are, very alarmed by the prospect of the line. One of the reasons that the Department of Commerce has had, how many, 21 different outreach meetings in every county around the state where the line might possibly go through, to engage community and give them a chance to express their concerns. We have an elaborate process established by law involving the Public Utilities Commission. They've done a determination of need. They're going to select a route. They're going to have public comments on that, public hearings on that. There'll be various other actions probably will be taken, litigation or otherwise. So, I mean, this has a very defined set of procedures to go through before we get to a point of if it's approved and if there's a permitting is provided by the state agencies, which is another whole consideration. We're still quite a ways away from the kind of situation that you described. I've certainly thought about it. I certainly, based on what happened in North Dakota, very, very concerned about that, but it's premature to make any judgments at this point.
Will you remind me if you support replacing Line 3?
I've said that there's no environmentally guaranteed safe way to transport oil, and other forms of energy from one location to another. If it's not transferred by pipe, then it's transferred in most cases by trains, and we've seen the consequences of those mishaps and the damage they've done. Fortunately, I've seen them blow up here, and it's frightening experience. Fortunately, no loss of life. But so I mean, you got to weigh the one problem with another. I'm very concerned about the fact that Enbridge, the oil just travels through Minnesota, but as it does with the rail lines, travels through Minnesota to other sites. We don't receive a direct benefit from that, which is very concerning. But we'll have to see what the route is. We'll have to see how it proceeds. But I recognize the imperative to transport oil, electricity, and others from one source to another. And except for conservation, there's no totally environmentally friendly way to do so.
Governor, you're headed up north this weekend, it sounds like, to fish on Mille Lacs. Does that reflect a continued concern about tourism dropping off amid the walleye limitations on that lake?
Well, I'm encouraged. I tried to get a motel reservation for tomorrow night, and everything's booked. So that's a good sign. I don't know if there's some local events or whatever. The bass fishing has been highlighted as the #1 bass fishing lake in the United States. And part of what I'm going up for is fishing for bass. Well, I dearly love to catch a muskie too at some point along the line, but there's also an excellent fishing lake for muskies. Is to tout the really positive aspects of Lake Mille Lacs and what it offers to anglers, and recognizing that doesn't replace walleye fishing, and no one's happy with the situation that we're in right now, and DNR and as Commissioner Lambert just appointed a think outside the box group of experts from outside the DNR, from outside even the state of Minnesota, some of them, to take a fresh, complete new look at what we're doing and are not doing, try to restore the walleye population in the lake. I mean, so you know, it's very frustrating for everyone involved in this administration, and it's very debilitating and damaging for people whose lives and occupations are affected by this serious problem.
Did you just say that the governor of the state of Minnesota, you had trouble getting a reservation in Mille Lacs?
Well, I didn't pull any strings.
Did you eventually find a room?
If I had, I know somebody here would be on there.
On a different...
I'm driving up there first thing that morning. I'm driving up early that morning. Anybody wants to tail me up there, I'm leaving at 6:30 Saturday morning.
On a different subject, you're waiting for the federal government to approve the waiver on reinsurance. Any update on the status of that? And what about the Real ID extension request?
Well, as you know, the Secretary of Health and Human Services approved so the first step said that our application is complete. Now they have a period of up to 6 months for public comment and review. I'm going to Washington next week for a couple days before the National Governors Association meetings in Providence, the end of the week. And one of the main meetings will be with Secretary Price and the new director of CMS and ask that they expedite that review as rapidly as possible.
And what about the Real ID extension?
I'm going to meet also with the Secretary of Homeland Security, Secretary Kelly, also to press that, make sure we're on track. I believe that we are. Everything we've had in terms of conversations ongoing, which preceded the administration or preceded the legislative session, everything has been, indicated that they're satisfied that we're on the necessary track and that we'll have a necessary extension, but I want to hear that directly from the Secretary.
We'll start to get our first glimpse at what rates in the individual market will look like probably by the end of the month or at the beginning of August. Given all the uncertainty about healthcare, not only in Minnesota, but of course at the federal level, what's your level of concern about what those rates will look like?
Well, I'm concerned, certainly. And, we've done a huge amount here in Minnesota with the first premium relief and then also the reinsurance, and which I believe, insurers should be very confident is taking effect in Minnesota, will take effect. And also the initiatives we've taken with the federal government, we've done absolutely everything, and I think far more than most states, to reduce the need for increases. But the companies make their own financial decisions. I'm not privy to what those are. We'll have to see what they are. We'll have to see what kind of participation there is in areas around the state and what kind of choices that provides for Minnesota consumers. But I'm not going to prejudge.
Given the amount of money that you and lawmakers have put towards addressing these problems, should residents who are on these plans be upset if a double-digit increase or something in line with what's happened in the last several years comes their way again for 2018?
Well, certainly the kind of increases we saw last year would be extremely upsetting and really underscore the need for the public option that I proposed in the last legislative session, which was denied. I noticed the Republican Nevada legislature passed such a version of a public option, and the governor there unfortunately vetoed it. But if the private, well, I'm not going to prejudge. Let's wait and see what happens. But that would be one alternative I would certainly propose. Again, both in terms of competitive rates as well as providing access and another option for people living in different parts of the state.
Are you being kept abreast as to how many plans have submitted for
that was
offerings in the next round? Not what they're asking, but what
I've not been told about the final decisions that have been made, which are being communicated, I think actually today, to the Commissioner of Commerce. I'll certainly follow up with him, but I don't have that information directly myself now.
Everyone good?
Okay.
Thank you.
See you 9 o'clock on Mille Lacs. What's that?
6:30 outside your house.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, if you want to ride up, yeah, that's great. Okay, thanks.